Welcome back, my gentle people. This is Corner Stories, and today we have a few cheating stories for you and a few dodged bullets. So let's get into it. My GF and I dated for half of 2022, then broke up. After about 1.5 years apart, we got back together last winter and have been together again for about 3 months. During that year we were apart, she had a relationship with a coworker who she was also living with. She called it a situationship. Also during that year, they backpacked several hundred miles of the PCT together. They both moved to separate cities last fall after the hike, but decided to remain friends and made plans to return to hike another several hundred miles of the PCT this upcoming summer. My GF and I started talking again last fall, about 1 month after they parted ways. While we were talking, she invited me to join them over the summer, and I planned to join for part of it, about 4 weeks. She never mentioned that they had any romantic relationship while telling me about her time living with him plus his family or her time backpacking with him. I thought they were just friends. Pretty soon after officially getting back together a few months ago, we were discussing boundaries and I told her explicitly that I expected her to tell me if she had any romantic history with any friends who are currently still in her life, especially if me and her were going to spend time with said person. She acknowledged how I felt and I appreciated it, but didn't mention anything about them. A month later, we were discussing how the summer hiking trip would go with the 3 of us. They would be hiking without me for the first few weeks. We were discussing the tent situation, and she mentioned wanting to sleep in a separate tent than him during the part of the trip that it was the 2 of them. I was confused and asked why, since it made more sense for them to share a tent, splitting the weight of a 2-person tent, and then me and her could have our own tent when I joined them. She seemed kinda meh on the idea of them sharing, but didn't tell me why. In retrospect, it seems likely she herself wasn't comfortable with the idea of sharing a tent with a former partner without telling me their history. She recently told me about their history, and I am very hurt. Of course, everyone has a right to their own past, and I don't want or need to know every detail of every guy she's ever been with, but I feel very betrayed that she would hide her history with someone that she was going to spend so much alone time with, and invited me to spend time with them without telling me. To me it feels very relevant to know this information, and it comes to former partners who are currently in both of our lives in a big way, spending 100% of every day together for 6 weeks. I directly told her I felt this way, but she ignored me and omitted the information. I'm really hurt by what is happening and feel like it will be hard to trust her moving forward. From her perspective, I can understand that if she was afraid I would break up with her after hearing this, she wouldn't want to tell me. But I don't know why she would be worried about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with being friends with your exes. She is good friends with another ex of hers, she would put him at 1 or 2 in terms of closest friends, told me, and I'm totally fine with it. I'm unsure about how to think about our future and would love to hear some outside opinions. Thanks. Relevant comments. Maleficent Vacation 93. She's going hiking with a former boyfriend with whom she lived with and broke up because they moved cities? A lot of red flags in the post. OP. How is she acting after you told her how you felt? I can understand being friends with an ex, but this seems very extreme. I don't know the details of their relationship as I just found out today. I just tried listing the facts, not sure exactly why they stopped seeing each other. I haven't talked to her about it besides hearing her tell me and apologize for keeping it a secret. She also said she knows it was very disrespectful and wants to do anything to keep us together. After she told me, I just said I needed space to think and haven't contacted her since. Maleficent Vacation 93. Definitely getting more context is needed. I personally think one-on-one trips like this with a recent ex is a boundary I wouldn't be comfortable with, especially without knowing the details of their relationship. They were obviously at a stage that they were living together. Being friends with exes are totally okay, but this just seems strange. Like, have you met her ex ever? Is she FaceTiming and calling this person a lot? This seems like a trip that you would have with a very good friend, not an ex-boyfriend from under a year ago. Are they that good of friends? Are you comfortable with that? Personally, I'd proceed with a lot of caution. I'd probably have a hard time trusting a trip like this, and I'm not even sure how you could set boundaries for this. OP. They were a situationship, as I wrote in the OP. She moved to a small town to work, and couldn't find a place to live. He was a coworker who lived with his family in this small town, and she ended up living with him and his family, and somehow something romantic came out of that. That's what I know, and I'm not interested in asking her for more details. I've never met the guy. She texts with him occasionally and recently complained to me that he hasn't been responding to her texts that much since he moved to his new city and got new friends, this before I knew they were a thing. She was also upset when he expressed uncertainty in joining for the summer hiking trip, which surely happened after he learned that I was the new BF and that I would be going. Update: 2 days later, I talked to her last night about the situation. She was very apologetic and admitted she made a huge mistake and betrayed my trust, vowing to never do that again. She said the reason she eventually told me was because she couldn't hold the guilt in anymore from not telling. Interestingly, when I used the word lied, she argued with it at first, claiming she didn't lie, but then quickly changed her mind when I pushed her on it. I asked why she felt like she needed to not tell me about her history with him. She said it was because she knew I was going to get mad. She didn't bring up anything specific that I did to give a reason to think this, just a general feeling. She pointed out that she felt confused about whether I wanted to know about their history or not, because earlier in the same conversation that I told her I wanted to know which of her friends were exes, months ago, I also cut her off when we're talking about our year apart and she started a sentence with, "I had a lot of situationships." I got uncomfortable and interrupted her, saying that I didn't need to know that. I regret how I acted in that moment. I didn't yell or get mad, but I was uncomfortable and shut down the conversation about that topic. I should have let her finish her sentence at least. And it probably made her feel that I was overly sensitive about her past. She said because of this, she thought I didn't want to know about the hiking friend from last year. To me it just feels like there's no inconsistency not wanting to hear your partner say, "I slept with a lot of people in the year we were apart," and wanting to hear them say, "I slept with the guy who I'm friends with and we're about to hike with for 4 weeks." Also, if she actually thought I didn't want to know their history, why did she feel so guilty not telling me? I would also like to point out that our relationship in 2022 ended when I dumped her unexpectedly, and I treated her very coldly the night we broke up. I had a lot of pent-up feelings about how she was treating me that year. I can totally see how her fear of being dumped suddenly again had kept her from wanting to mention her relationship with this guy. It would make sense that she was afraid of me abandoning her again. At this point in the conversation I was understanding of what she did. She apologized in a way that felt genuine, and I felt like we could work through it. Then I started digging a little deeper to see if I was still missing anything about the situation. I forgot to mention it in my last post, but a few weeks ago she told me that her ex basically bailed on the hike for this summer. It was very likely he wouldn't be able to go. She told me at the time it was because he couldn't afford it. Around the same time, she also complained to me that he wasn't texting her back and she was annoyed because she felt like he didn't want to be friends with her anymore now that they didn't live in the same city. Thinking they were only ever friends, I thought that made sense. I would feel sad if my friends didn't talk to me much after moving. Yesterday, when I confronted her about all this, I asked again why he couldn't go on the hike, and she said again it was because he couldn't afford it. I asked her if she believed him, and she said yes. Then I asked her if he was okay with her inviting me on the trail. She revealed that he actually didn't like the idea of me coming, but he was mainly bailing because of money. I asked to read their text message conversation about it, and she agreed. In their text conversation, her ex at first pointed out to her couldn't afford the trip. But then he also brought up that he didn't like the idea of hiking with me. He said he felt jealous, even though he knows her and him were just a temporary thing last year, and he wished I weren't joining them on the trail, because the PCT was their thing. There were a lot of words, but he was using phrases like, "I feel a pit in my stomach," and things along those lines. He also said he felt like a placeholder since their temporary relationship was sandwiched between me and her first dating in 2022 and then getting back together. She told him that she was upset that he couldn't disentangle their past relationship from their current friendship. She agreed with him that hiking the PCT was indeed their thing and said that she wished I wouldn't come because she felt like I wasn't a great partner for the trail. I am faster than them, and she said she thought I might get impatient, or at least that she could hike alone with him for the first half and then alone with me for the second half so that we wouldn't have to meet. The situation was finally made clear from reading their messages. She wanted to keep this guy in her life even though he wasn't over her. He confessed all this to her a month ago, and she kept it a secret from me. She lied to me about the nature of their relationship because she knew I wouldn't be okay with them being friends given that there was still something there. Also, a few months ago, before we were officially dating again but just talking every day, when she initially asked him if I could join their hike this summer, she didn't use my name, she just said, "my friend." This was another lie by omission, this time to her ex, to prevent him from knowing the truth about the whole situation. Obviously eventually she told him I was the friend, and then later he decided he didn't want to join. During the whole conversation that night, the point I was making was that her omitting their history in order to protect herself hurt my feelings and made me not trust her. And during the conversation last night, she tried again to omit information to protect herself, when she claimed that he only bailed because he didn't have enough money. I wouldn't have even known that he still had romantic feelings about her if I hadn't asked to read her texts, because she omitted that again. I dumped her after that. I respect myself too much to stay in a relationship with someone who is comfortable repeatedly lying to my face in order to get her way, especially about such an important topic so early on in the relationship. To those who gave insightful, nuanced advice, thank you. I learned a lot from this entire situation and know how to handle these topics better in future relationships. To the one person who suggested that I ask to read their texts, I can't thank you enough for helping me dodge this bullet. Relevant comments. How did she react when you broke up with her for the second time? You did the right thing, man. She was never going to tell you the full truth, and figuring it all out was all the proof you needed that you'll never be able to trust her ass. She tried to convince me not to for a while, saying she would change and we could work through this and stuff. She also lamented how we were perfect on paper because of similar hobbies, and didn't know what to do now with this large painting she had just made me for Valentine's Day. No huge emotional display, because she probably predicted this was going to happen ever since I found out on Monday. She then went on to kind of pivot the conversation into how really this situation was both of our faults, since I didn't cultivate an environment where she could feel comfortable telling me stuff, based on how swiftly I ended things between us last time. I just don't care anymore and want this person out of my life forever so I can move on. Dark mode nose wind, my friend, ouch. That would do it for me. I'm not even sure she's aware of how she treats other people, to be honest, or if she's just incredibly selfish. And that is where I will leave this story. Feel free to comment your thoughts on the story. Do you think OP dodged a bullet, or did he end the relationship too quickly? And with that, we will move to story 2. I'm going to keep this brief. Hi everyone. While we were together, I, 37F, discovered that my husband, 41M, had been having an affair with his ex-wife. I met my stepkids when they were 6 years old, and my spouse has 2 children from a previous marriage. My husband and his former wife have been co-parenting for years. They are now 13 years old, and I have never found it objectionable as long as they are the parents of their kids. My 4-year-old daughter, who is the only child I have with my spouse, forces me to put in extra effort at times. My spouse would always act rudely toward each other when they dropped the kids off, so I didn't think anything of his hanging around with his ex. What hurt me the most was that my stepkids knew about their affair and never said anything. When I found out, they cried and tried to beg me to stay, but I couldn't because my husband ruined it. I understand they do not owe me anything to say what happened. There isn't much to say really. I've been getting death threats from his mother because I left, and now I am at my friend's house. This is going to be hard, especially with my 4-year-old, because she wants to see her dad and I feel like a POS. I am stressed out and don't know what to do. I didn't get a lawyer yet, but I'm trying to get on that update. I cut my phone off to focus on my situation. This isn't much of a cool update, but I am getting a divorce and living on with my life. My soon-to-be ex-husband tried to beg me and told me it wasn't true and that he still loved me, but I knew he was trying to manipulate me. I didn't explain how I found out in my original post, so I will now. On his iPad there was messages on it with his baby mama, and they were very sexual. I've even found sex tapes of them. I was disgusted. My mill will be getting charged for her death threats, and thank you guys for the advice. I did screenshot everything. For my stepkids, I still love them and do not blame them because yes, they were probably told to lie. I told them if their dad allows them to come see me I would be happy, but deep down I know it won't happen because he is giving me a hard time. Story 3. I try to make it as short as possible. So me and my ex-wife Mary, real name cause I don't care if she finds out, have been together for 5 years and married for 2. Our relationship was mostly fine and we always had only one major issue. She cheated on me when we were together since 3 years, and after a lot of therapy I decided to forgive her and she to work harder for our relationship. It wasn't an easy decision at all, but I loved her more than myself and I decided to forgive her. Then since things were going great and she changed from therapy, I decided to marry her and she accepted. It was the best day of my life, even though that my friends told me that I was insane to marry her because of her cheating and her past. She have a very high body count of over 100, but I loved her anyway. Unfortunately, my friends didn't show up for my wedding because they were extremely skeptical, but I didn't care because I was too happy. Her parents too were happy that we worked things out, and the whole wedding and honeymoon was just amazing, and it was like I was leaving in one of those fairy tales. Then after a year of marriage she became pregnant and I was super happy to start a family with her, and the whole pregnancy went smoothly. But then when our son was born, something was wrong cause he didn't look like me at all and had just small things of my wife but really nothing like me. I started thinking at it and some things were off, like her announcement of pregnancy. When she told me that she was 4 weeks pregnant, I didn't had sex with her for 2 weeks because I was in another country for the sign of a very big client, and then when I asked my wife to be there when she was about to give birth she hesitated but told me yes. So after thinking again and again at all the wrong things, I did something that I don't regret. I took my son for a DNA test while my wife was at work and I was at home with my son. After a week the results came back and my worst nightmare became reality cause he wasn't my son. The same day I immediately contacted my lawyer and after explaining him the whole situation he started to prepare the divorce papers. So after a month I served them to my ex-wife and told her that I knew that our son wasn't mine, so to don't make things complicated and to just sign the papers. The drama started and she started to cry, beg me to not divorce her, telling me that she would become better, that we could put our son for adoption, that she made a mistake and all the classic excuses of a cheater, but I put my feet down and told her that I couldn't change idea after I already forgave her once. After 2 hours of this pathetic scene she finally signed the papers and packed her stuff. She called her dad crying and telling him to pick her up but without telling him what happened. While we were there waiting for him she was crying and begging me to forgive her, that she would become better, but I just ignored her, and when her dad arrived he asked what the hell was going on and I showed him the results of the DNA test. He started yelling at her and was extremely mad and angry for what she did, and finally they drove away to her parents' house. Fortunately in our country the divorces under 5 years are quickly, so in a few months we were divorced and she got nothing from me, not even alimony or any type of it. The thing is that in those days and even now I never cried, shouted or did any of these things, but I just feel broken and empty inside, like this thing changed something in me. Obviously my friends when they knew about this were happy and started to tell me the classic "I told you so," and thinking at it now they were right, but I was blindsided in love with her that I didn't understood the whole mess. Months passed by since the divorce and I still feel like an empty and broken human, but I don't regret doing the DNA test because my worries were right. Now the issue is that a few days ago I met some of me and my ex-wife, mutual friends, and we talked a bit about our life changes and obviously about the whole mess, and they told me that my ex-wife is depressed, sad, and that the AP disappeared leaving her to stay at one of their house, and they asked me if I regret the divorce, but I told them absolutely not, because I forgive once but not twice and not a big thing like baby trapping. They called me heartless and cold for not thinking at her even once, and the baby is 1 year old now, because according to them she still cry for me and still punish herself for what she did because she really regret her actions. Comments. She cheated without a condom, kept the resulting pregnancy, and tried to pass the baby off as yours. That's not one mistake in the heat of the moment. That's a series of calculated betrayals, and she was willing to lie and use you for the rest of her life. There's no coming back from something like that. For me it's the offering to put her own son up for adoption thing. This whole story sounds fake, but that's like wow. You'd be surprised. I had a week-long fling with a girl once when I was on vacation between duty stations. She offered to bail on her kids to move out of state where I was going. I told her I had no interest in someone who would leave her kids. And that is the end of the stories. That's it guys, this is where I will leave you. I hope you enjoyed the stories I had for you. I certainly enjoyed them. Please be sure to drop a like or a comment, and it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to the channel. Until next time, be kind, be curious, and I will see you. Corner Stories signing off.